A SEAL captain asks a room full of veterans, "Any combat pilots here?" Everyone expects a man to stand up. Instead, a quiet woman in the back rises to her feet. You won't believe what happens next. The hangar was a massive, echoing space, filled with the dull sound of boots on concrete and a low murmur of conversation. Rows of folding chairs were set up, but many people had already spread out among the parked aircraft along the walls. Old, scarred helicopters sat next to polished, gleaming jets. The air smelled of machine oil, gun solvent, and a faint hint of jet fuel. Banners celebrating service milestones and missions hung on the walls. But in the back, shadows seemed to hold the quiet memories of past sacrifices. The crowd was a mix of people, tough veterans, fresh recruits, family members, and journalists there to cover the event. Cameras clicked and a few laughs rippled through the hangar. Some veterans carried the weight of their service in the rigid set of their shoulders. They were marked by battles fought in deserts and jungles far from home. Recruits fidgeted nervously, adjusting their caps and lanyards looking for friendly faces. A few officers stood with a steady gaze, silently noting the discipline of the troops around them. A SEAL captain, tall and broad-shouldered, strode to the microphone at the front of the hangar. His presence seemed to fill the room. He stopped and scanned the crowd with eyes trained by years of combat. The chatter slowly faded away. "Any combat pilots here?" he asked. His voice was firm and commanding, leaving no room for doubt or distraction. A few heads tilted in curiosity, and some people looked around, unsure of how to respond. Others chuckled quietly, thinking it was just a rhetorical icebreaker. But in a far corner of the hangar, something shifted. A woman, sitting quietly with her back against the wall, moved in her seat. She didn't raise her hand right away. Instead, she straightened her back, squared her shoulders, and a faint glint of determination appeared in her eyes. She wore a faded leather jacket over a plain t-shirt, dark jeans, and scuffed boots. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, practical style, without any hint of vanity. To the untrained eye, she could have been anyone, a mechanic, a family member, or a curious civilian. Nothing about her appearance suggested she had stared death in the face at 30,000 feet, guided lives through chaos, or flown missions that most soldiers could barely imagine. Yet, there was a quiet power in her stillness, an unspoken authority that made heads turn even before she stood up. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Who is she?" "Is that Lauren Cain?" Some older veterans stiffened, their memories flickering back to old headlines and stories of a fearless pilot who earned her medals under fire, flying missions others had called impossible. Others watched with simple curiosity, unsure what to make of the sudden energy she brought to the room. The captain's eyes scanned the crowd, narrowing as his gaze landed on her. He blinked almost as if to confirm what he was seeing. "You?" he asked. The single word cut through the lingering chatter. Heads swiveled and all conversation stopped. All eyes shifted to the far corner where the woman, now standing, moved with a quiet, unshakable confidence toward the stage. She didn't rush or hesitate. Each step was measured and deliberate, yet effortless. It was the kind of walk that comes from years of discipline, where every muscle knows its purpose. As she approached, the murmurs of speculation grew louder. Veterans leaned forward, trying to place a face they thought they recognized. Recruits whispered to each other, trying to hide their awe. The air grew thick with anticipation, curiosity, and disbelief. Some people doubted her. Some felt a spark of inspiration, but everyone felt the sudden charge of someone extraordinary entering their midst. When she reached the front, the captain studied her, his sharp eyes assessing whether she belonged there. There was a flicker of unspoken emotion in his expression. Respect, disbelief, perhaps even a touch of envy. He had faced his share of warriors, but here was someone who didn't announce her presence with a boast or flamboyance. Her presence alone demanded attention. She spoke clearly, without hesitation. "Major Lauren Cain, United States Air Force, retired." The words landed in the hangar like a hammer striking steel. Gasps followed. A few older veterans muttered under their breath, instantly recognizing the name. Newspaper clippings, mission briefings, and battlefield reports came rushing back to those who remembered her. She had flown combat sorties over Afghanistan, navigating hostile territory and bringing her crews home safely. She had saved lives in moments when survival seemed impossible, and now she was here, standing quietly, waiting for the next question. The captain's brow arched. "Major Cain," he said, "it's hard to believe you're here quietly after all these years. Tell us, what's the most dangerous flight you ever took?" His tone was part curiosity, part challenge, as if he were testing himself against the magnitude of her courage. Sarah's gaze sharpened, her eyes narrowing slightly as memories surfaced. She spoke without drama or flourish, letting the truth of her experience paint the picture. She described flying through narrow mountain passes at night, with her engines straining and fuel dangerously low. Radar was locked onto her position, tracing her every move. Enemy fire lit up the terrain below, with tracer rounds slicing through the darkness. Her co-pilot had frozen in the cockpit, paralyzed by fear, forcing her to take full control in a situation where a second's hesitation could mean death. The room went silent, each word echoing the danger she had experienced firsthand. Some veterans stiffened, recalling their own missions, recognizing the nerve and raw courage required. Recruits leaned forward wide-eyed, imagining the terror and responsibility she must have shouldered. She continued, detailing how she descended into the chaos, landed under heavy fire, loaded wounded soldiers and took off again with the aircraft barely intact. Every detail, from the roar of gunfire to the trembling hands of the soldiers she carried, made the hangar vibrate with tension. When she finished, the captain didn't speak immediately. He just studied her, the weight of her experiences hanging in the air. The audience processed what they had heard, some in disbelief, others in awe. They weren't just listening to a story. They were witnessing proof of extraordinary courage. Sarah had arrived quietly, without fanfare. Yet every word confirmed that she was someone no one in the room would forget. Even the small details, the worn leather of her jacket, the steady cadence of her voice, the calm in her eyes, told a story beyond medals or decorations. She wasn't there to demand attention. She was there because her story demanded it. The impact on everyone in the hangar was undeniable. A young Marine whispered to his friend, "She actually did all that?" His friend, a new recruit, could only nod. Others shook their heads, incredulous yet captivated. Sarah had achieved what few dared to, yet she carried herself as though it were nothing extraordinary. The captain finally broke the silence, leaning into the microphone. "Major Cain," he said, almost with reverence, "now welcome." "Tell us more." Sarah smiled faintly, not with pride, but with the calm assurance of someone who had faced impossible odds and returned to tell the tale. The crowd leaned in instinctively, every heartbeat and whisper seeming to synchronize with the tension she brought into the space. She was not just a pilot or a veteran, but a living testament to courage and restraint. The hangar had grown so quiet it felt hypnotized. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed muted. Every eye tracked her movements, from the faded leather jacket to the boots that clicked softly on the concrete floor. For a moment it felt like the world had condensed, the hangar walls narrowing to frame a single figure, a woman who had danced with death in ways most people couldn't imagine. The captain, who had seen more warriors than he could count, studied her intently. His brow furrowed slightly, a mix of curiosity and disbelief crossing his stern features. "Major Cain," he said, his voice carrying the weight of years in command, "how did you manage to survive some of the missions we've heard about?" He wasn't trying to interrogate her. He wanted to know how someone so quiet and unassuming could possess such extraordinary skill. Sarah's eyes flickered for a moment, a tiny glint of memory surfacing. She remembered the desert winds whipping against the fuselage and the ghostly green terrain through her night vision goggles. Her hands had been steady, trained to react without hesitation. She thought of the soldiers waiting below, their lives balanced on her judgment and skill. "It's not about me," she said softly but clearly. "It's about knowing what has to be done and making sure those depending on you survive." The audience leaned closer as if to catch every word. Some veterans murmured among themselves, recognizing the cadence of someone who had truly lived what she spoke of. For them, it was more than just a story. It was a validation of battles they had also faced. It was an understanding only someone who had stared death in the eye could offer. The younger recruits, wide-eyed and untested, realized that the world they had signed up for demanded more than courage. It demanded perfection under pressure. Sarah paused, letting the weight of her statement sink in. The captain asked Major Sarah Cain to share a specific mission that truly tested her. Sarah began her story quietly, describing an almost impossible mission to evacuate a group of soldiers pinned down by an enemy force in a narrow mountain valley. The flight was dangerous, with turbulence and enemy fire. She revealed that her co-pilot froze from fear, forcing her to take full control of the aircraft. She described descending into the chaos, landing under heavy fire, loading wounded soldiers and taking off again with the aircraft barely intact. The captain and the audience listened intently, captivated by the authenticity of her story. Sarah explained that she didn't seek recognition, and that her quiet approach to the mission was a matter of survival. She explained that a leader's job is to ensure others survive, and that quietly is the only way to survive. The captain and the audience were visibly moved by her story, recognizing the raw courage and composure required. Sarah's presence alone shifted the energy of the room and earned her the respect of everyone present. The captain pressed Sarah to provide evidence for her stories, as some in the audience were skeptical. Without hesitation, Sarah pulled out a folded photograph from her faded leather jacket. The picture showed her helicopter riddled with bullet holes, resting on a scorched landing zone with soldiers crouched around it. She also pulled out a medal she had received for her bravery and placed it on the podium. She emphasized that the evidence was not for praise but to show that the mission was real and that lives were at stake. Sarah went on to describe the specific mission in greater detail, highlighting the human element. She explained that fear is a natural and necessary emotion, but that it must be mastered. She taught the audience that leadership is about making sure others survive and staying calm when everything else is chaos. She concluded by stating that success is not about glory or medals. It's about calmness, focus, and doing what must be done. Her words had a profound impact on the audience, and even the captain acknowledged the depth of what she had conveyed. She had not just shared a story, she had delivered a living lesson in responsibility and bravery. After her story, a calm settled over the hangar. The SEAL captain, still visibly impressed, asked Major Sarah Cain why she had waited so long to share her experiences. Sarah explained that many people didn't expect a woman to be a combat pilot, and had doubted her endurance, judgment, and ability to lead. She had to prove herself through action, not words, and she recounted silent moments of defiance where she stayed calm and made life-saving decisions while no one was watching. She also spoke of the emotional toll missions take, including the grief for those who didn't survive, and the constant weight of responsibility. Sarah emphasized that courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. She taught that leadership is measured by precision and clarity, not bravado and noise. The audience, including the captain, began to see that true courage is often invisible and that true leadership speaks silently. The captain asked Sarah to describe the mission that changed her, the one that made her realize she was more than just a pilot. Sarah recalled a night mission in a narrow mountain valley, where a unit was pinned down by enemy fire, and her co-pilot froze in fear. In that moment, she realized the responsibility was hers alone, and that every life on the mountain depended on her composure and skill. She described navigating the chaos, guiding her co-pilot and making split-second irreversible decisions under fire. She explained that leadership is about being the calm in the storm, and that while fear is always present, focus and responsibility can overcome it. Her story had a profound impact on the audience, and the captain praised her for her flawless execution of a mission that few would witness firsthand. Sarah explained that accountability and focus, not recognition, are what drive a mission. She described the quiet gratitude of the soldiers she rescued, which she said was the only reward that mattered. She emphasized that the human element is everything, and that true leaders are defined by their judgment and their ability to lead under stress. Sarah began to share the mission that had left the deepest mark on her soul, a rescue mission in a hostile urban environment with constant enemy fire. Her co-pilot was tense, and she again had to act decisively, guiding him with clipped commands while balancing skill and responsibility. She described the delicate precision required to land and take off under fire while a building was collapsing around them. Sarah emphasized that courage is not about controlling fear, but acting through it. She spoke of the sacred trust placed in her by the soldiers and explained that her mission was measured by the lives she saved and the trust she honored. She told the audience that leadership is steady and courage is silent. As she finished, the hangar erupted in heartfelt applause. The captain shook her hand, telling her that she had provided lessons that would last a lifetime. Sarah smiled, knowing she had accomplished her goal of sharing a blueprint for leadership, courage, and composure.